Happy Halloween and welcome to the first part of this year's Halloween special, which I'm calling the Dracula double feature. It's just something I wanted to do this year where I cover two different Dracula themed things, hence Dracula double feature. I guess it works.
This video will be about a game and the second part will be about a movie. And I'd like to point out that part 2 might be finished after Halloween, but I'm sure none of you mind that much.
I'm going to try my best to get both of these out in October, but I'm not going to make any promises.
Anyway, part 1 is about Dracula 2, The Last Sanctuary, the sequel to Dracula the Resurrection, which is the game that I reviewed last year. I recommend watching that video first in order to gain a little bit of context, but I'll do a quick recap anyway. Dracula Resurrection was a decent, albeit short game that was fun enough to play through. It had some pretty good puzzles, some horrifying visuals, and some really questionable voice acting.
Tomorrow will be too late. I must go to the castle now.
Vengeance is nigh.
I remember the tune they used to call one another.
But ultimately, I liked it, and I wanted a bit more after the lackluster cliffhanger ending.
It did feel really incomplete, lots of build up but no real payoff.
Luckily, the game did actually have a follow-up, so in comes The Last Sanctuary. I do wonder if these games were split up prematurely, as believe it or not, The Last Sanctuary was released only 3 months after the first game. Which is weird, right? I'm fairly certain that's weird. In any case, it's time to find out if we actually get to take on Dracula in this one. I really hope so.
Oh, and one last thing. In this game, unlike Dracula Resurrection, you can die. Do you mind?
The introduction of the game recaps Harker's daring escape from the pointy nipple vampire women at the end of the first game. But since we already know that part, we'll talk about the next segment, which has Dracula conversing with one of his Draculakis, who is looking pretty dapper with that top hat.
And by dapper, I mean that these 3D models still strike fear into my young, vulnerable heart.
Dracula is basically doing one of those villain monologue things. You know the sort.
Ooh, don't fail me again or I'll be very cross.
Okay, sorry sir, I won't fail again, sir.
Good, good. Now let me dissolve into mist mysteriously.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's just your basic villain to henchman conversation.
He also has a conversation with a wild-haired, crazy dude in a padded cell, but hey, it's just more standard villain stuff.
Nothing can stop me now. Nothing and nobody.
Well, Dracula, say hello to nobody.
Meanwhile, back on the good guy's side, a dark shadow hangs over Jonathan Harker. You see, Mina, his wife who was captured and put under Dracula's thrall, isn't well, and Harker feels like he's being watched as well. So immediately, the game sets up a more eerie and suspenseful tone, which is pretty great. Also, Dr. Seward is doing his best to look after Mina. For reasons, Harker makes his way to Carfax, a sanctuary for Dracula in London, and the game begins from there. The way the game plays here is no different from the first game really, and that's not a bad thing. The pre-rendered backgrounds combined with free look give it a great vibe. Although I must admit the environments feel lower quality than the first game, like they're more compressed maybe.
I suppose there is more game to fit on the disc this time, but it's a bit of an unfortunate sacrifice really.
Anyway, the Carfax house has a few little puzzles scattered around the area and inside the house. Mainly, Harker is just on the lookout for clues, in a dangerous place where Dracula hides out.
And all Harker has is a gun that doesn't kill vampires. It's gonna go well.
So the first step really is to pilfer every item that you can possibly take, because this is a point and click adventure game. Sometimes it's not even clear what the hell you're even grabbing. But hey, if there's a strange golden cylinder in this drawer that I can take, then it probably means something. Anyway, we find a lovely variety of items, notably some film reels from the Styx Theatre, which I suppose is a clue as to where Dracula may be hanging out. We also find a journal belonging to the eponymous vampire.
Carfax gives me great satisfaction. And it is a safe refuge where I can drink the blood of my victims.
Oh, well that's nice, Drax. You found a nice place to hang out.
That is why I leave my black guard to watch the house.
Blackguard? Please be a dog. Dogs are nice, I can vouch for dogs.
Well, the room ahead has a guy who is sleeping upright? Or is he dead upright? Is this the Blackguard? I mean, if so, he's not doing a very good job. Either way, he has a key that we can take and...
Oh, that's the Blackguard.
Dear God, what is that bat boy? What is this draining red bar? What's actually going on here? Yeah, okay, so there are things that can actually kill you in this game, and they'll do so when the timer runs down.
So out of curiosity, let's see what happens if we put Harker in the firing line.
Well, this is disappointingly unthreatening. First of all, the draining bars are quite lenient, they don't go down fast at all. And even when they do run out, all the guy does is warp slightly forward, and then he just stands there, breathing nonchalantly, like I've just invaded his personal space.
He's not trying to be funny or anything, he's just a bit socially awkward, bless him.
So now that we've got this figured out, let's let the second timer run down so we can actually die and see what happens.
No, take your time. It's not like some of us have to die around here, buddy.
In actuality, this guy takes 3 whole timers to kill you. I suppose I can kinda get it if it's the first encounter, but it really takes me out of the experience. Anyhow, after the third and final timer, this is what happens.
Is that all?
Who's this cheeky chappy grinning in my face? I just want to pinch his little cheeks. Anyway, yeah, this is a game over. A scorched earth, reload a save or restart type of game over. It's going to be one of those games. You can really tell it's a game over though, because Dracula stands next to some bland red text that says, game over.
It really gives it away.
So what you're actually supposed to do when this bat monster attacks is make sure your gun is loaded and shoot the lock behind you so you can get into the other room. You then enter this room full of furniture and move a dresser in front of the door, marking you as safe. Because apparently, this hulking beast isn't strong enough to smash through a wooden door. There's still the whole issue of escape, and to do that, Harker has to successfully kill all of the creatures. The way you do this is letting light into the room, because light kills vampires, and positioning mirrors so that when the door opens, the vampire bat monster disintegrates.
But then there are more.
I have to admit, already in the first 15 minutes, things are fairly tense, even if it's not that scary because the timers are a little bit kind. Also, the second bat basically allows you to position a second mirror as well, which is stupid. You should have done something about that. The remaining group of vampire beasts are killed by Harker swinging from the chandelier. Sure, why not?
And with all that sorted, we're free to finish up all the puzzles in the house.
The puzzles in this area aren't bad, I've certainly seen worse. The aim is mainly to get through a specific door in the basement to reach the sewers. The reason that Harker needs to be in the sewers is because he needs to get to Dr. Seward and Mina to report his findings. We also meet Bill, the asylum owner, I think? He's also showing off a lot of midriff.
Oh, Bill, you fan-servicey stud.
Oh, and remember Bill, he'll be important later on. Anyway, the guy we saw earlier in Carfax, the sleepy, maybe dead guy, yeah, his name is Peabody and he'd been working for Seward, notably spying on Dracula at the graveyard, which means there's a whole graveyard segment where we meet him once again. Except this time, he's been fully turned into a vampire, and is now serving Dracula.
Which means he wants to kill me.
Prepare to die. Oh, but don't worry. I shall make sure it's slow and extremely painful.
For you.
Are you serious?
Okay, dude, is that all you got? Really? He's a terrible vampire.
Listen, even the lamest of vampires have to be better than this. Even Edward Cullen has speed and strength. All you've got is the ability to act like an animatronic in a haunted house theme park ride. It's pitiful. Well, at this point you have a cross and a stake anywhere, so it's better to just push a tombstone onto him and put him out of his misery. Upon searching his body, we find a compass and a journal. As it turns out, Peabody was staking out Dracula from afar, but he couldn't see what he was doing from a long distance. Which is why in Carfax, you're forced to pick up a handy-dandy telescope, which shows dear old Drax poking the eyes of a statue to enter a mausoleum.
So let's follow him. What's the worst that could happen?
Oh. Upon awakening from his massive gargoyle bender, Harker returns to the asylum where Seward and Mina are. Except, shock horror, they've been taken by Dracula.
But what? My God, it's Dracula.
To be honest, you can keep Dr. Seward. He got way too close to me earlier and I got a bit uncomfortable.
I will rescue Mina though, because she understands personal space. Let that be a lesson, Dr. Seward.
To get this rescue mission going, you've got to grab some items from around Seward's office, including Mina's wedding ring and some stuff from his safe. And we don't know the combination for this safe, so we have to do a bit of safe cracking. I'm gonna level with you, I dig this puzzle quite a bit. It's not very complicated, to be fair. All you're really doing is putting a stethoscope on the safe and waiting for it to make a click noise on a certain number. But it's fun, I enjoy it.
Everyone loves safe cracking, it's a wholesome, family-friendly activity.
What is not so fun, however, is working out where to put the stethoscope. It's really not obvious, and this is emblematic of an issue I have with the game in general. You see, one thing I've noticed interface-wise is how finicky it feels. I really can't remember if I felt this way about the original, but I'm sure I didn't. It's definitely apparent in this one.
Mostly, it's just the hotspots you need to click on.
Like, specific hotspots needed to solve puzzles are just hard to find. You'd be forgiven for missing them entirely. Even the walkthroughs have to be dead on specific about telling you where to click, and sometimes have to provide screenshots. That's how ridiculous it can be. It's also really easy to accidentally click out of a close-up, which is frustrating. That's a much smaller nitpick though. After cracking the safe, we gather the dragon ring from the last game, and a file regarding the strange, crazy guy we saw in the intro. Turns out he's called Hopkins.
Suppose it's time for some visiting hours then.
This poor fella has essentially become a minion of Dracula, so we need to feed him a fly to get him to work with us. If only it was always that easy.
Delicious. This fly is a real treat.
And this eventually means that we can trade the dragon ring for his specs, which allow you to see hidden vampire-y things, I guess. It's not really clear why he has these. Also, remember dear old Bill? Yeah, he's a vampire now. But it's easy enough to knock him out with a cross and make some vampire-killing liquid. Dracula then directly calls Harker through Seward's office just to be generally antagonistic, which is, kinda petty, really.
But then again, I'd expect the King of all Goths to be that extra.
In a little while, everything that is yours will be mine. Then your life will be worth no more than that of an insect, and I shall simply flick you away.
No, you hang up. After this call, Vampire Bill vanishes, but we manage to track him down using our vampire vision, leading us to a confrontation with him. And now that we've coated our gun in anti-vampire liquid, we can just shoot him and he, gets deleted from the game files. I can only assume that's what's happening here. No animation, he just gets straight up erased from existence. Anyway, from here we reach the Styx Theatre, but not before engaging in a decently put together door lock puzzle. It's kind of a code cracking thing, and I mean, it's fun. I used a bit of paper for it, which is nice. Unfortunately, the puzzles don't maintain that standard of quality. While in the Styx Theatre, it is revealed that Dracula has not only been making movies about himself, but has also built animatronics of himself. Why, you may ask? Well, because, actually, I don't know. This part of the game is really weird and confusing. After a bit of dossing about, Harker gets captured, and Dracula ties up Harker, but doesn't kill him, even though he probably should, and he also leaves his gun in the room. Luckily, the minion Hopkins has decided to help us out some more. You know, I'm starting to dig this Hopkins guy. He may be a bit eccentric, but he's been by far the most useful NPC across both games. Despite his help, escaping the Styx is easier said than done, because the realistic mechanical Dracula decides to harass Harker, which is dumb. What's even dumber is the fact that you basically use a grappling hook to drag Mecha Dracula into a fan to slice him to bits and use him for spare parts. And no, I'm not making that up. Oh, and by the way, remember dear old Dr. Seward? Yeah, he's a vampire now. But not one of those evil bitey vampires, just a sad kill me before I turn evil type of vampire. That's no fun. I wanted to delete him. And then, for some insane reason, Harker gives away his only defense to Dr. Seward so he can destroy the theatre. With a revolver.
Well, I guess, that works.
Do you not think that I could have given him my box of matches though? Like, I might have needed that anti-vampire gun.
Honestly, it's around this point that the last sanctuary begins to lose itself.
Harker then becomes determined to burn down Carfax. So we go all Minecraft on the house and turn furniture into planks of wood with one click. After lighting the wood on fire in an attempt to make things more tense, Dracula locks us in the building. Sounds exciting and dangerous, right? Well, he forgets that there's a door in the basement, with the key right bloody next to it.
No effort. Just no effort in this murder plan. I'm disappointed, Dracula.
You also need to build a vibrating box thing that scares rats and blows up gargoyles. There's more to it than that, but I can't really be bothered to explain it properly. Building this device is kind of confusing, and involves multiple superfluous steps, including developing a photo so you know which numbers to use on different settings.
It just feels like it's designed to pad things out.
Anyway, like I said, you blow up a bunch of gargoyles with this thing so you can enter Dracula's mausoleum. Oh, and we have the dragon ring again. Our boy Hopkins left it in Bram Stoker's grave.
And if you listen very closely, there's an Easter egg where you can hear him rolling in that grave.
When we finally find Dracula, he's like, nah, I'm going home. London sucks, man. And you know what that means? Back to Transylvania we go. There are lots of reused locations from the first game here, but we do interact with parts that were ignored before, which is kind of neat actually. I appreciate that sort of thing. Unfortunately, a lot of the problems that I mentioned earlier only get worse from this point. I had to look up walkthroughs just to know where to click with certain items.
A lot of it is painfully not obvious.
Like, I knew the solution. If I know which items to use, I shouldn't need a walkthrough. The hotspots are in ridiculously easy to miss places. We also run into Diodorko from the first game again. Remember her? It's this lady.
And you know what? It's nice to see a familiar face around here.
But pretty much as soon as you meet her, those lady vampires from the first game straight up just shank her when she tries to help you, and she dies.
Oh no, not Dorko. Oh, I'm going to miss her with her disturbing groans. Where else are we going to get those?
Dracula's castle in this game basically feels like a bunch of puzzle rooms, and they're not fun, really. The new game over system raises its head in such uninspired ways. No animations to show your death here or what killed you. Just sometimes, if you click on the wrong thing, you immediately get booted to the game over screen. No fanfare about it. It kind of feels like they ran out of time or something here. That, or the deaths were a late addition to the game and were shoehorned into dumb places. I don't know. We meet up with Hopkins again after going on a cable car ride, and boy am I glad to see this guy again. He then offers to show us where we need to be, which is great.
Where would we be without dear old Hopkins? Oh.
Alas, poor Hopkins, we hardly knew you. Remember that time we fed you a fly? That was great. I'm gonna miss you, Hopkins.
Oh, well then, I guess he's dead. That's a shame. He was nice. He was decent. The world's not fair.
Oh well, at least we can get some revenge by crushing the Draculakis with a big stone head. Oh, and you shoot one of them with a cannon.
That might have been overkill, I don't know.
The final few rooms are just more puzzle room type things. There's a lava room, a room with a goopy doppelganger, and a room with a flight of stairs that can kill you if you go down them wrong.
Ooh, unfair point and click puzzles, so spooky!
Once you're all done and dusted with this set of inane puzzles, you descend an elevator and this sets off the final sequence. Harker is immediately decked by the Kung Fu nipple vampires and is brought forth to Dracula. Using her wedding ring, which we found earlier, we bring Mina to her senses, and she gets to confront Dracula for being, well, Dracula.
Of course, Dracula isn't pleased about being refused.
Then you leave me no choice. You must die.
And here we have the final quote-unquote boss fight, where, well, all you really gotta do is put a thing in another thing. It's actually something that Dorko tells you to do. In fact, Dorko tried to put that thing in the other thing earlier, but she got stabbed. However, Harker avoids this by doing a mean combat roll, so he doesn't get stabbed.
Truly, the Dark Souls of point-and-click adventure games.
The whole place begins to collapse and Harker rushes to save Mina. And look at that run, pure majesty.
No! It can't end this way, not already!
Hey, now you know how I feel about the first game. What? That's it? That's all I've got? But we barely even saw Dracula.
Oh, and then Dracula gets impaled by a big statue.
Is this really the end?
How are you still talking when you're just bones, my man?
I can talk.
I don't remember asking you. Some people.
But is he really dead? I'll defer to Buffy on this one.
You think I don't watch your movies? You always come back.
Money.
So that was Dracula 2, The Last Sanctuary, and really, this one is a bit of a disappointment actually. Despite being a much more fleshed out game, much of this one is filled with moon logic puzzles that pad the game out in an unfun way and make it just less enjoyable in general. The worst of the puzzles are in the second half of the game, and I mean, Resurrection's puzzles were nothing to write home about, but they weren't this bad. Plus, the added death scenes of The Last Sanctuary would have been a great touch if they'd been done properly, which they really weren't. The timers were a bit too lenient, and a lot of the deaths felt thrown in for some cheap scares and tension. Needless to say, they don't really work for me. Resurrection had a better general atmosphere, and that one had no deaths. All in all, I'm a little saddened that this one felt so flat. And that's really how I'd describe it. Flat. Flat like those female vampires at the end of the game.
And that wraps up Dracula 2, The Last Sanctuary, and thank you for watching the first part of my Dracula double feature. Join me at some point very soon for the second part of this Halloween extravaganza, where we visit Dracula in 1972. Stay tuned.